Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Michael is the author of So Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. To the brightness within you and the truth that is rooted within me. Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. If you want to talk to Michael, please press 1. It lets me know to put you in queue. And today is Memorial Day Celebration 205. Welcome, Michael.
205 days since Memorial Day, and a whole group of people who have joined for the last 205 days in changing the dynamic of war on planet Earth. And our invitation to you today is to join us in that project. How in heck are we going to change war on planet Earth? That's ridiculous, Michael. It's been going on for thousands of years. Yes, it has. The insanity reigns, and we're here to change the insanity. How are we going to do that? Well, one hostile, one fearful reality at a time is the way we're going to do it, just like you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So our invitation to you is to join the team that changed the world. Michael J. is a vegetarian. He's sitting in front of me, my son, and he just gave me the look over that eating an elephant one bite at a time. that wriggled some brain cells in him. Anyway, we're sitting here in St. Louis, Missouri, and our invitation is for you to look at the hostilities, the fears, the frustrations, the angers, the grievances in your life, and to be willing to say, rather than the blame game, it's all somebody else's fault, just to start to suspect, this is happening in my physiology. Maybe this is about me. Maybe my mind is a liar when it tells me it's about my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, my spouse, my children, the guy down the block, the guy at work, the government, the economy. Maybe the mind is lying to us. It isn't all about somebody else. In fact, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop is the line that says, you'll notice if you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the only one that was there every time. That might get you to start to suspect that it's about you. There is a technology. There is a way to remove those things. It's called forgiveness. It has nothing whatsoever to do with letting other people off the hook for what's happening inside of you. Now, I'll oftentimes have people who will hear that I'm doing this workshop on forgiveness called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And they'll proclaim that they have no need whatsoever for it because they've already forgiven everybody, their mothers, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers, their friends, their enemies, their children, their, co-workers. They've forgiven their former spouses. They've forgiven their present spouses. They've even forgiven their future spouses. And what I know when somebody languages that is that to date they have done no forgiveness work whatsoever. We've been taught a lie. We've been conned. Forgiveness has nothing to do with, I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. I let you off the hook because I have frustration, anger, fear, grief, pain. Forgiveness is the technology. It is ancient Aramaic technology. It goes back at least 2,000 years. And it shows exactly and precisely how to go inside yourself and find the place in you that produces your hostility and fear and give it the opportunity to change it. If you're not familiar with that tool, we invite you to go to our website, www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. It's about 6 links down the list on the right side of the page. And if you look under that link, you'll see the first 4 links are totally and completely about forgiveness. It'll give you the whole story. It'll give you the latest reality management or forgiveness worksheet process. It will give you chapter 24 of my book. It's a free download. You can actually download the whole book. And then there are two links that are really important, and they are previous radio shows where we've walked someone through the whole process. So you've got a custom radio show that you can listen to, and the third link under download worksheets is the most awesome forgiveness process I've ever supported or guided anybody through or seen happen, and it happened live on the show. So you've got a full set of instructions, actually two sets in those two MP3s. You just click on them, right-click, and just say save to your computer, wherever you know where they'll be, where you keep things like that, and then double-click on it, and you're listening to a live interaction between myself and Jeanie and actually the first one is a medical doctor, a very brave young lady who came into the show with some pretty heavy-duty feelings. She had just missed a workshop series we did out in Washington State, and she went through three major issues in her life. And if you wonder, does it really work, you'll hear the shift and the change in her energy and her voice. At one point in the worksheet, she actually speaks about how she was visualizing getting a gun and killing the person that the worksheet ended up being about. And when she ends the worksheet, she's in compassion for all three people that the worksheet ended up bringing into the fray. It's awesomely powerful when you watch how this process works. So we invite you to listen to those two links, start doing worksheets. Take one issue, one little irritation, one little upset that you have today, and forgive it. You'll be making a contribution to changing the dynamic of war on planet Earth. All war, I would offer, is about people who live in poverty of being, who have covered up their true nature, which we have a very simple definition of what's the true nature of a human being. Hold a newborn child. By the way, a couple of days ago, I got to do that with Adeline Nora, who just arrived into the world, our first grandchild. And so she weighed in at 7 pounds 1 ounce on the 14th at 9:02 on her mother's birthday, actually, which is kind of a nice birthday gift for CJ, who's actually sitting here with me right now. And so we got to hold Adeline, and all you have to do to define a human life is hold a newborn child. You know exactly what human life is. The world instantly goes to work and assists us in removing our human lives and living out of a false identity based in hostility and fear. When we do that, we live in a poverty of being. In a poverty of being, we think if we just steal it from somebody else, then we'll be happy. If we can just kill the enemy, then all our pain will go away. And it doesn't matter how many enemies you kill, your pain increases. There's an awesome video which you might want to get a hold of. If you Google it, you can get a DVD of it. Although some sites say there are no DVDs. There's actually somebody, I think, in Canada who bootlegged the DVD of it. It's a movie that's out of print. It's called Saved by the Light. It's a true story about a man named Daniel Brinkley. He's a hired government killer. He's an assassin. That's what he does. And the movie shows, and I really acknowledge Daniel for being willing to expose himself so much in the public media. Eric Roberts plays his part in the movie, and it shows what a mean kid he was, young man, and how vicious he was. And then he has what the world calls a near-death experience, which, of course, the world's got everything backward. It's not a near-death experience at all. It's a near-life experience. He goes through clinical death after being struck by lightning. And in that clinical death, he has a direct experience of his true nature, which has been covered up by all the hostility and fear of his generations and of his family system and his cultural system. And he has this direct experience of this awesome being that he is called love. And when they resuscitate him after, I believe it was 28 minutes, he was clinically dead. They actually wheeled him out to take him to the morgue. He comes back, and all of a sudden he knows who he is instead of thinking he's this hostility and fear-based image in his mind. And the work he does to clean it up, and basically what Daniel does now is travel around the country. We bump into him on occasion on platforms as we're speaking. And he teaches people about who they are. And his two key words that came out of his near-life experience, where he had this clinical death, the two ideas that he shares with people in particular are, one, and this is what he was told in his inner life experience, you are a powerful spiritual being. And two, love makes a difference. It's what you are. It's who we are. Watch that film and watch the struggle that he goes through in dealing with what's in his carbon-based memory, what's in his body's mind, so to speak. And we all have generations and generations of all kinds of insanity in our bodies, minds, and we strike out and we struggle. We had a young man named Michael on the show about 10 days ago, and Michael shared with us as a kid the traumas, which were pretty extreme, that he went through. Dad gone, mom abusive, just horrendous, and how after he came back from the military, he would go to crack neighborhoods. And this guy's about 6'6", pretty big guy, and military trainer. And Michael shared with us on the show that he would go trolling in crack neighborhoods, not because he did crack, but because his way of covering his pain was to rage at and beat up on people. So he'd just troll these crack neighborhoods, hoping somebody would jump him, so he'd have the opportunity to beat up on them and assuage his pain a little bit for a little while. Well, it does assuage the pain a little bit for a little while. Hostility is a drug. It's no different than alcohol. But after the use of the drug, of course, we're deeper in debt to the insanity. And Michael started doing this work a year ago, actually exactly a year ago, or maybe a little bit less than that. Actually, I think it was February this year. Michael started doing this work. And now he's teaching forgiveness. Now he's working with alcoholics and drug addicts and supporting them in moving out of the insanity of the hostility and fear-based mind. So we're inviting you to join us in that process. And we're delighted that you're with us. And Jeanie, is David with us? Is Dr. Tim with us?
David is with us, and he is on. Tim is not with us yet.
Oh, well, bless his heart. David, how are you today, sir?
I'm very well. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, sir. Loud and clear.
Good, good. Well, when you were talking about the holding a newborn baby, the first thought came to my mind was you holding your new granddaughter and how to remember what that is all about. So now you have yet another experience, and I know that you talked about your experience when your daughter was born and that awakening that you had from that. So, and we'll comment on the movie Saved by the Light, and that I watched it again several days ago. I'm not sure which day that it was, and it one of the things that came to my mind was that that Eric Roberts wanted to change everything and change everybody and get everybody to see things the way that it is that he now saw things, and the challenges that came up for him with his immediate family and with the neighbors and the people that he had been in confrontation with for all of those years. So it is an excellent movie to get started and give an illustration of the work that can be done. So,
well,
and I'm doing well here.
Yeah, cool. Fabulous. Jeanie, do we have any callers? I know Nene was going to call in, I hope, today.
Nene is on, and she's on the air. Hi, Nene.
Oh, hello, Nene. How are you this morning, young lady? Or this afternoon? It's afternoon again.
Hello, my heart family.
Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. I'm going through a crisis right now. We spoke yesterday on the radio, on the chat room, starting to really hold in the space and starting to really being the new pattern that you want to create in reference to relationships. And you were so right, Michael. A new layer came out Sunday night during the party, And then people call me Monday to ask me, how do you do this? How can you come here and face your ex and all that and be so radiant and vibrant? So I explained a little bit about the energy, and I invited everybody. Well, my next workshop for relationships comes, and Ryce is coming too. So that was awesome. But then last night I coached somebody, another lady, and it was very empowering to invoke Bruja de Pusha together. And at one moment, she and we both felt inside of us this energy tingling through stomach and through the arm and the head, something very powerful. I was feeling it. I could hardly speak, talk. And she also was I said, well, this is the Ruja. This is the internal power we have that it's moving. Okay? So we did a few things, and then I went back home to complete my worksheets. And I discovered something very, very deep about the loss of a baby that I had years ago. And, I was able to face and process that sadness and that energy that I guess I had denied in the past. So that was very, very powerful. Mm-hmm.
So my understanding that you were pregnant and you lost a child, and so what surfaced out in your work last night was this loss. Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah, very, because I got pregnant with this guy, and when I told him, he was very angry. His content showed up, and we were dating. So I was not married. I was dating, and so of course my internal content of abandonment, and all that also was triggered. So I started bleeding, like a few days after, bleeding. And when I went to the doctor, he said that if I wanted my baby, I have to rest for the rest of the pregnancy. And, I was here. My daughter was young. I wasn't married, on all that. And I had to make the choice. And I said, well, I can't sleep 9 months or be, keep the proper treatment because I can't afford that. So, so I had to get rid of the baby because I was bleeding. So until last night, that's when I was able to process.
Mm. That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Please, what's happening? What are you feeling?
Well, these feelings and the tears of going through that all by myself, and then Lucia was with me, and also it was very difficult for me to deal properly. So it's triggered sadness and guilt.
So you have your next few days of worksheets cut up for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting, Michael, is when I did my worksheet and all that, and then at one moment my thought was when Lucy was born 27 years ago, she was born in December. So after that, it came to my mind again this picture of her daddy holding her and dancing with her. She was so little. So I took my phone and I texted him. And then I texted him and I said to him, 27 years ago, I remember you holding Lucia and hugging her, and I remember seeing your tenderness, and you're so sweet, and you were fascinated with the baby. And then I wrote him, and I want to tell you that you are a great your wonderful daddy. Then I realized that for the first time, I've acknowledged him as a good father.
Mm. Well, and, for those who weren't listening to the show the other day when you were on, you shared that story of that memory coming and how, as the mother and him holding your daughter, that you went into jealousy and anger. So just so the audience is tapped into why that is particularly meaningful, is that, as a young woman, there was jealousy toward your own daughter, and now, having done your work, and of course that has to have impacted your whole relationship with your daughter all these years, and clearing that out has got to open a whole new space. And it's interesting that in the same time frame as all the dynamics of dealing with that comes through, you get a visa so that you can go back and visit her. And so it's interesting how all of that is falling in place, that you're finally going to get to go and spend some time with her and be able to get back here.
Yeah. And then also in another worksheet, in all this that I was doing, I found out that there was guilt in me because I didn't really fight for, quote unquote, fight for my marriage. I was married, and then when things, went wrong, quote unquote, I just left. No, this is not working. This is not what I want. All that. And then I also felt guilty that perhaps I did everything properly to keep my pregnancy, which I really wanted, the other baby. And then I said to myself, also, perhaps one of the reasons that I stayed too long in the wrong relationship with Gary was because somehow I wanted to, okay, this time I'm just going to stick to it and I'm just going to make it work. But then I realized that obviously it was, the wrong reason, and so there was no purpose or no more harmony in keeping up with the relationship with Gary, because it was just me trying to make it up for the times that I thought that I didn't stay in my marriage, that I didn't,
And of course, Gary was a perfect person for you to be with at that point to get to look at all of the dynamics of self-worth and all the things that went hand in hand with that, so that you can come to a clearer space of knowing who you are and being able to create relationship that really supports you and brings you into aliveness. So I certainly hold a space and join you in being able to create that. And your work over the last 10 months has been awesome to observe and watch what you've gone through and what you've dealt with in your life. And perhaps for the listening audience, just so they have a sense of it, let's say you were to rate your life a year ago on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of aliveness, joy, creativity, and then you were to rate yourself today on a scale of 1 to 10, aliveness, joy, and creativity, how would it compare over the period of a year's work? Sometimes people say, well, how long is this going to take? And so if you were to just kind of do a comparison from back in January 2nd, I remember the first workshop you were at, we were in Fort Lauderdale at the CSL, where we're going to be again in January, about the same time. But how would that rating go from January 2nd to today? What's that, almost a year later?
I remember when I met you, I was probably in 1, because, when I met you at the Center for Spiritual Living, a week before I went there, and I prayed to find a solution, because I was really, really depressed, and I was even taking antidepressants. I think I mentioned this to you. And then from now, I am probably in 9, but it's increasing. And my joy and, definitely, yes.
So from a 1 to a 9 in less than a year, that is so powerful, the work that you've done. And aside from just doing that for yourself, you came into teacher training this summer, and you've been working with other people and bringing them forward in the process. It's awesome to watch what you've done, and especially that story of the woman who worked with you, and you did some forgiveness work with her and shared the commitment and invited her to read the commitment to her son who had disappeared from her life 10 years earlier. You want to share that just for people who are maybe new to the show and give them a sense of what kind of things you're seeing with the work you're doing on it?
Yeah, well, she also belongs to the dance community, and I started doing a couple of worksheets with her and explain her what the forgiveness through forgiveness is. And she was a lot in pain, and her hair has fallen also because she never heard she never saw her son in 10 years. In 10 years. I mean, in 10 years, never heard from him. Nothing. And so she did the worksheets, and then I said, print the commitment every day to his picture. And then in less than 2 weeks, I think there was like 10 days, 12 days, something like that, somebody knocks the door, and it was her son.
So 10 days from 10 years of no contact, she starts reading, she does some worksheets, she starts reading the commitment to her son, and here he is knocking on her door 10 days later.
Yeah. And it was very beautiful because he was feeling guilty. He was in his guilt and shameful that for years he disappeared, whatever. And the mother just opened that door and the heart, and she'd stay like 4 days cooking for him and doing everything and reconnecting.
So instead of having to be in her pain about the 10 years lost, she was able to just be there and being and support him in opening to healing. That's so powerful to hear that and to see that. It's just awesome. I remember several years ago, and I had a private practice in South Florida, and Nene is teaching, by the way, in South Florida. And I had a private practice there, and I had a woman whose daughter at the age of 11 had run away from home, and it was 8 years, and she hadn't heard from her daughter. She didn't know if her daughter was alive or dead. And she did some forgiveness work and some breath work around that whole issue. And 3 days later, got a phone call from Southern California. And there's her daughter on the phone asking how she's doing and letting her know that she's okay. You know, we live, when you start to understand this work and you realize that you live in an energetic universe, and when you're willing to be responsible for the energies within you that cause you pain. You know, the game of denial is so powerful in our culture. And somebody who doesn't understand the process, they'll say, well, you know, I never deny anything. Well, the easy definition of denial is this. When you're in some sort of turmoil or pain, who do you talk about? When you talk about somebody else, you're in denial. When you say, you know, geez, I'm hurting, and Charlie did this, and when Charlie did that, and he said this, and it was just like Bill, who was just like Harry, you know, and people who live in denial, their conversation's always about telling somebody else what they should do and how they should fix it. And, of course, that's one of the pseudo-solutions of the non-being mind that we present in the codependence work, and that is, if I could just control everybody and everything, I'd never have to look at my pain. The way that you take responsibility as opposed to having a conversation about somebody else, and as you're doing so powerfully in the work you're doing, Nene, the way you do that is when you're in pain, you go, and I hurt, and I need to do something about this. I would love to have some support to heal myself rather than I'm going to tell everybody else what to do. And once you take responsibility and you start to see parts of your mind that hold pain that are totally, completely repairable, but they're not repairable when you can't see them. And so, you know, we appreciate the fact that, one, that you're doing the work you're doing in your own life, two, that you're doing it with others, and the fact that you're keeping in touch with it, that you call the show so often, and, you know, it's pretty courageous to share what you've just shared, and we appreciate you a lot in the process you're doing because you're addressing issues that are so common in the culture. You know, it's like there's so many people in the culture with these issues, and to hear you share your real-life experiences and the way things are moving in your world is pretty awesome. And we appreciate you a lot. We'll look forward to seeing you in January when we're back in South Florida.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Anything else to share today, Nene?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to share a little bit about the worksheet, because I've been helping people, and to find a goal, it's very difficult for most people at the very beginning, because really you have no idea that it's a goal. So what I've been doing is that I say, okay, what is that we are complaining about? You know, when you go in 1B, that's where you're back to complaint. So they say, well, I'm neglected, or these people reject me, whatever. And say, so I turn the page and I said, okay, so right here where you're complaining, and then I say, what will be the opposite of being neglected? Oh, accepted or respected.
Right.
So that's your goal. So that I wanted to share, because that really clears very quickly and puts people into what the goal is.
Excellent. Great way of doing it. That's an excellent idea. Is that idea copyrighted? Can I use it, Nene?
Sure.
Cool. Yeah, it's very
easy to go, oh, okay, right away.
Right. Cool. Fabulous. All right. Well, thank you for your
Thanks so much.
Okay, we appreciate you and delight in sharing the planet with you. And hold the space for this next layer that's come up for you. That's so it's pretty deep, pretty intense, and so we'll be holding you in our hearts as you move through that layer. And you know, there's an awesome line in the Course in Miracles that says, "Millions yet unborn will benefit from the work you do," and you're opening the space for women, especially the Latin American, and as lady from Lebanon that called yesterday, the sexist attitudes in that culture, that you're opening a space for all women on the planet to be able to move through those issues that are so deeply embedded in our cultures. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Hugs. Bye.
All right, blessings. Bye-bye. Jeanie, anything happening in the chat room? Any callers? By the way, our call-in number. I was just going to give our call-in number, 646-200-4169. If you have a question, a comment, we would love to hear from you. Go ahead, Jeanie. Excuse me.
I was just going to say there's nobody else with their hand up on the switchboard. Several people out there just listening. Chat room is pretty vacant today. There's just a couple of people, and they're just listening. They said hi. That's about it. I did get an email from someone that just asked that we hold the space for them. They've kind of had some dissension between this lady that wrote and her sister. They've not heard from her since March, and they, were just kind of like, emotionally they have been separate. And I guess this time of year everybody would, it should be any time of the year, but especially this time people just want some peace. And their family doesn't even know whether this sister is alive or dead. And so just hold the space for them to be able to work through what's up for them. And
so her sister has disappeared?
Right.
Oh, wow. That's pretty heavy duty at this time of year.
They haven't heard from her since March.
Did she give us a name of her sister?
She actually did, and her sister's name's Lisa.
Lisa.
And someone that we have known in the past as Desiree. And they said, even though that there has been trauma and drama, and that she knows that the sister believes a totally different reality from theirs. They don't know where she is or whether she's even alive, and one of their aunts is urging them to try to get back in touch and make amends, and they were wanting to know if we had any clue as to where she might be, and to hold the space for them that at least, if nothing else, that she's in a safe space.
Right. Well, maybe you could forward that email to me.
I will.
Okay, sweetie. Thank you. So anything else in the chat room?
No, everything's quiet.
All right, very good. Well, the conversation we were having yesterday, we were talking about people who are in the space of, why am I angry and frustrated and scared so much at the time? And we began the conversation and talked about that sometimes that becomes a power person dynamic. And where most worksheets that one does, it's about, in order to change the feelings and what's going on, it becomes about looking and drilling down into our deeper thoughts and being able to change or forgive the energy that's beneath those thoughts. But when it's a power person dynamic, it really takes an extra level of commitment and work, because energetically it's not just about changing a thought. It's not just about changing that, root thought and you get a change in feeling. But if it's a power person dynamic, it's something that was genetically encoded in us. And then that genetic encoding is played out, let's say if it's somebody who's always in anger. And so being in that state of anger, they can easily look back and see how the generations have done the same kind of anger. And if, as a child, the parent, usually a parent, poured their anger on the child over and over and over and over again, sometimes relentlessly, in physically, emotionally, verbally, mentally abusive ways, then literally there's simply we are energy accumulators, and there's this accumulated energy that is poured into us. And just like a tuning fork, if I put a middle C tuning fork in front of a second middle C tuning fork, the second middle C tuning fork doesn't have any choice about whether it starts to vibrate. When that first tuning fork starts to move, the second one is going to move with it. It's literally absorbing the energy. And so the child who's encoded with the anger of the parent, who has no idea how to resolve or how to live a true human life, that is, as that awesome presence of love that they are, will tend to help obliterate the human life in the child. And that child grows up having absorbed all that energy. Each time the power person poured that into the child absorbing it then turns around and finds a situation that resonates those brain cells and pours out the same thing. It's just the way it works. And so when one is always finding themselves in that frustration, that anger, that fear, whatever it is that was going on with the power person, more than changing the thought, and here's where you shift, you start out with the forgiveness process, the reality management work, and then you go into breath work to be able to constructively, in the space of love, pour out and dissolve that root energy of that anger, that hostility, that fear, or whatever. Elsewise, all one has to do is be in a similar situation, and against their own will and choice, here they are puking on their partner, puking on their child, their coworker, whatever it is. That's just there, and it is literally what makes up insanity, because we lose contact with who we are as human beings, and the urgency of removing those energetic dynamics by stopping the conversation about everybody else, by stopping the conversation that tells everybody else what they should do to straighten out their lives, and starting a conversation about ourselves. Oh, here's what's going on for me. Here's my pain, and I'm willing to forgive this pain. I'm willing to remove it. Changes the whole family dynamic. And as I say, it takes an extra level of commitment and support to move past those power person dynamics that are so powerful in our lives. And basically, the power person dynamic works in three ways. If those who are new to the show, and this comes out of our codependence work, is that when we're functioning out of the memory bank of our so-called bodies, that is those energetic dynamics of the generations, then there are only three behaviors possible. When there's no stress, we'll do whatever we did to get along with our power person. When stress starts to build, we'll do whatever we did to resist and survive with our power person. And when we become ultra-stressed, we'll do whatever our power person did to us that we hated the most. If our power person was kind of loony and crazy, then here we are in a situation where when the stress is up and the chips are down, we'll go into that same loony, crazy, energetic pattern. And it is forgiveness that helps us to remove that. If we don't remove it, then what happens is those energetic patterns reflect in our bodies. And we end up with a distortion on a cellular level of the tissue, because our minds are a function of the cellular structure of the so-called body. So it functions throughout every cell in the body, and relative to the body, there are two qualities of energy. There's that which builds it up, that which tears it down. Forgiveness supports and assists in moving the tear-down energy out of the tissue structure that tends to play out in all of the situations that we find ourselves in. And so that's what in a nutshell, that's what we're here to support people in doing. And it's awesome to watch people. Danae and Michael, I think, were actually at the same workshop. Michael was on the show about 10 days ago, who would troll crack neighborhoods to find somebody to beat up on, and now teaches forgiveness. Those kind of changes in the community that's developing and working with these tools is so awesomely powerful. And if you're in a situation where you've got some challenges, mental, emotional, physical, we are here to support you, to hold the space, and to bring the tool in particular of forgiveness. And again, forgiveness is how you remove what never belonged. And, David came up a couple of weeks ago with the idea of going into the new year having done 5 worksheets a day for 40 days. And I know that it's been a while since I've sat down and done that, and it's really, I found really, really been powerful and useful for me to every day be drilling down into my own unconscious dynamics. And when we talk about unconscious dynamics, we're talking literally about your whole bloodline. Every thought, every feeling, every reality is stored holographically in every cell of your structure, including the sperm and the egg. So when you conceive a child, that child will have in its structure every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every reality you've ever engaged in. And all you have to do is watch it. It'll play out in your kids and your kids' kids and their kids until you say, I think I'll stop talking about everybody else and start having a conversation about me. What do I need to change? And then we start to move into, and we become a contributor to changing the genetics of our whole family system. And it's an awesome gift to give the world, and we acknowledge everybody who's interested and willing to give that gift. David, does that bring any thoughts forward for you? And have we seen Dr. Tim yet? Well, I was
Tim is not on. Tim is not on there yet.
Okay. David, I think I heard your voice in the background.
You did. This whole idea that we talked about doing the 5 worksheets a day for 40 days, and as you talked about it, it had been a while since you had done 5 a day for 40 days, and I'm just reading. The first thought that came to my head was using a analogy of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan played and practiced basketball every single day. He was out there, and to some people, he was considered the best, and yet he would still be out there doing his shots, taking his shots, doing his work. And he also had 3 coaches to coach and support him in doing his work and pointing out different things to him. As a man making $600,000-$700,000 a basketball game, and he's still willing to take directions and instructions for someone and to show up and to continue to do his work, which is pretty remarkable. And one of the things that I admire and respect about you, Michael, is that you're there doing your work. A lot of folks, some folks will have some information about your lifestyle and the work that you do and the time and the effort that you put into it. And just in committing to doing 5 worksheets a day for 40 days is quite a commitment compared to all of the other things that you and Jeanie have on your plate for teaching the work and doing the traveling and so forth. So I thank you for being the model and being willing to practice what it is that you teach versus practice what it is to preach. I have a definition of that. There are people that teach, and then there's people that preach. And most of the people that preach, my experience and projection of it is that they're preaching. They're not doing their own work. And we're going to be continuing on with this 5-a-day for 40 days into the new year, and a couple of other programs being put together for anybody that would like to continue, like Nene, and see what life is going to be like when 2013 comes into play. But we'll talk about that more next week as we're getting closer to the end of the 2011.
Cool. Well, and I'll bet if we had Michael Jordan's phone number and we called him right now, I'll bet you his phone is sitting somewhere in a gym and he's on the basketball court. That's why he's a professional. And the people who want to be professionals are out, slinging beer and having a turkey sandwich or something today. That's the difference. And lots of people talk about it, and lots of people tell everybody else about it and how everybody else should do it. But the doing of it is certainly a different process. And stepping in and doing one's work. I'm sure that if we named the top 10 athletes in the world right now and were able to call each of them, we'd find that, who's the gentleman I'm thinking of that's the famous golfer?
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods. I'll bet Tiger Woods is hitting a ball. I bet as we're speaking right now, he's swinging a club. Yep. Now, wait a minute. Why would he have to swing a club? He's the best in the world. Why didn't he quit practicing a long time ago? Because he's so good. And, it's interesting. We'll hear from people who will talk about forgiveness, and they'll go, well, I've been doing this for 2 weeks. Isn't that enough yet? Shouldn't I be finished now? And I've had people who've dissed me, actually. Well, you've been doing this for 40 years and you're not finished yet? What's wrong with you? Well, I'm still on the basketball court. I'm still on the golf course. I'm still doing my work. And when you start recognizing that the work is about cleaning up 1,000 generations of insanity, 1,000 generations of hostility and fear, yeah, it is a process that goes on. And if you want to become the real human being that you are, then you will forgive until you are finished with any physiological capacity to produce any form of hostility or fear. And that's what we're here to support you in.
And to add a little bit to that, if I may, is that we talk a lot about removing the discordant energies, disintegrated energies.
David, could you start that comment over again? You disappeared for just a second.
Okay. I said we talk a lot about the forgiveness process in removing the discordant energies, the disintegrative energies, and doing the forgiveness work. And it might be a good idea to mention that part of that whole process of letting go of things is then putting new things in. I got text from Dave Womack this morning, who's been doing the 5-a-day for 40 days, and he's doing really fabulous and was talking about that, and I invited him to take a look at, and what are you putting back in there? There are things that are going to surface, and for those who do the worksheet know that at the bottom of it says, now, how do I want it to be coming from the space of love? And so why every day? Because we do it every day automatically. We either do it consciously or we do it unconsciously. We either allow the unconscious to run the show or we put new things into the unconscious so that it's automatic and so that it's living that life. And that's life. That's part of the process of that, is removing and then putting something in that's meaningful and or something that's coming from the space of love.
Yeah, and I'm doing, I don't believe it is normal. Pardon me. It has become the norm. I don't believe it's natural for we as humans to have an unconscious mind. We create the unconscious when we hold the breath, and we converse about others when we're in some sort of pain or turmoil. And just being able to shift that dynamic, if you look at, in the workshop, I'll oftentimes do an example with Jeanie, and we'll be at the front of the room, and I'll demonstrate showing the exchanging of bags of garbage that we do in our Healing Through Relationships workshop. And then we'll demonstrate what responsibility communication would look like. And so, Jeanie, when you gave me that look, it brought up a lot of hurt in me. And what I'd like to do is learn to be responsible for my hurt and heal it. Would you support me? So that's responsibility communication, as opposed to look what you did and how you hurt me and how it's all your fault and blah, 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 blah. And then we'll turn to the audience and we'll ask the question. Now let's see, how many people were brought up with this mom in their home? How many people were brought up with this dad in their home? When they came home from work and they were in turmoil and upset, turned to their spouse and said, dear spouse, when this and this and this happened, it brought pain up for me. I would love support in healing my pain. And in all the years I've been asking that question, and I've asked it of tens of thousands of people, I've only ever had one young man who's about 23 years of age who, when I asked how many of them were brought up with a dad who, when they were in pain, would take responsibility for and own their pain with their language instead of telling somebody else and puking on somebody else about what they'd done to them, who would say, I have pain and I need support and healing. One young man last year, we were down actually on a yacht in Biscayne Bay in South Florida, and one young man put up his hand, first time I've seen it. And his father had studied with me about 25 years ago and had taken the tools to heart and put them to work in his life. But otherwise, the commitment that it takes to stop the conversation about everybody else, the commitment that it takes to drill down inside ourselves and be responsible for and move into our own feelings and our own generational issues, our own power person dynamics. And don't kid yourself. Whatever it is that your power person did that you hated the most, when you are ultra-stressed, unless you have forgiven to your genetic toes around that issue, stop kidding yourself. You do exactly what they did that you hated the most. Now, you may not believe that, but do a survey, and what you'll find, that's exactly what happens. And the forgiveness process is about how to move out of that dynamic and into, as you're saying, David, a conscious dynamic, opening the dissociated mind. Once we deny ownership, and again, the way to deny is be in some sort of turmoil and talk about somebody else. That's the definition of denial. So when we go into that denial state, we literally create a dissociated mind. We create a part of our minds that we have no control and no say over. We can sit around and critically think about what's in our dissociated mind. We can say, yeah, when the stress was up and the chips are down and I did this, it was terrible and horrible, and I'll never do it again, and I never want to do it again, and I'm going to do it differently in the future. But as long as we're still in denial, you can make all the choices. You can do all the critical thinking. You can have all the knowledge about this that you want, and nothing changes in that dissociated mind. The dissociated mind is absolutely 1,000% unchangeable. Because once you've sealed it off, it's not yours to change anymore. Now, when you begin to forgive, all of a sudden, the dissociated mind comes out of that dissociated state. It's not a Dr. Feelgood process to touch into those dissociated conditions within ourselves. But when we do, then we have access. By definition, once you have access, it's no longer dissociated. The forgiveness reality management worksheet is how to crack open. It's how to put an end to the game of projection. It collapses the projection that it's all somebody else's fault. And then, once you've collapsed that projection, you crack open the dissociated state and you come face to face. Nene shared a very poignant and powerful experience that after a year of doing this work, she came in touch with last night while working with someone else, which, by the way, is one of the awesome gifts of working with other people. You get to teach what you need to learn, and you get to break through your own stuff. So Nene, after a year of doing this work, comes in touch with some very powerful pain that she had dissociated from. And that's why the healing process is not very popular, because most people don't want to go there. They don't want to feel that. They don't want to deal with that. maybe we'll ask Nene if at some point, if she's still on the show, maybe she'd put together a timeline and we could do a show with her on the issues, in just a short year, because her process has been so definable and so powerful that maybe Nene would put together a timeline of her healing process and what she's gone through in the last year. And get to look at how many times she's opened, and she shared several times on the show, but it'd be kind of cool to hear it in one show. She shared, several very dramatic and very deep dissociated painful experiences. This one that she just shared on the show today is her latest level of work. And here's what we know is you can't open the dissociated mind until you're at a level of vitality that is more powerful than the content of the dissociated mind. It won't open. You can't go there. It's like you put a sliver in, and until you're strong enough to handle that sliver and what's in there, it's not coming out. And so the willingness and the ongoing process of doing the work, the removing of the loads of garbage, allows us and supports us in building vitality, paying attention to what you eat, how you exercise, how you move, how you live in your relationships are all things that strengthen, and as we strengthen, we move to new levels. And we're here to support every mind, heart, and being moving to new levels, and we that you're here with us, and we're down to just a few minutes. So, Jeanie, do we have any comments in the chat room, any callers?
Do not have anybody with their hand up and nothing in the chat room, but I did get another email, and this person says, I am a Swedish client. I have read and bought your book. After having read everything, I still have one question. If, for an example, a person is abused, should that person just tell themselves it's not true and then go on with their life? I've already asked the question to one of your Swedish affiliates and did not get a reply. I would like advice. For example, an abused woman that comes to you and asks for advice. What would you tell her?
Yes, well, the last thing I would say is to pretend it never happened. This work isn't about the pretense of positive thinking. In fact, we call the disease of positive thinking premature positive thinking. If you're thinking on top of a negative foundation and thinking positively, then you're in difficulty and you're in trouble. What we would suggest is that your forgiveness work is going to be about you removing the pain you have about this abuse issue, and then perhaps maybe even legally holding the person who did the abuse accountable for that abuse. It doesn't mean you pretend it never happened. Because you're responsible, you're being responsible for the energetics of what's in you and what's in you that draws you to that type of situation. The forgiveness process is about removing that, and then you may go fully in front of the person who's done the abuse and hold them perhaps even legally accountable. And if you have the space, you can call us on Skype if you're listening to the show from Sweden today. Maybe we could have this conversation tomorrow. That would be awesome to open the show with. Thank you for being here. Bring a stranger tomorrow. We're delighted you're here, and we invite you to get ready for the best year yet of your eternal life. Thanks. Blessings.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.